This video is sponsored by Surfshark, the best VPN on the market. Surfshark is an app or browser extension that allows you to change your location to access websites in other countries and keep you safe from hackers. For example, we here in Ireland can access other countries' Netflix libraries, streaming services such as DAZN in Spain for those all-important Premier League games. Surfshark keeps you safe and private by protecting everything you do online. When your device connects to the internet, all that information is, in a way, blurred out. Surfshark is particularly useful for keeping you safe if you use public Wi-Fi, such as a college or a cafe. Surfshark allows you to use one subscription on unlimited devices, meaning that you can even share an account with friends and family. On top of this, Surfshark offers a 30-day money-back guarantee, so if you don't like it, you can even get your money back. Our sign-up offer gives you Surfshark VPN for just over €2 per month and up to 4 months free. Why not scan the QR code on screen or use the link in the description to take advantage of this offer. What is up, my friends? How are we? You're very welcome along to a warm Saturday evening here on Anfield Agenda. Tonight we're going to be speaking about the EKITIKE interest from Newcastle, which by all accounts seems to be genuine and seems to be with a view to having both of them. Now, I'm not suggesting you have to believe that narrative, but that's certainly the one out there. We're going to speak about Malik Fofana. We're going to talk about, well, tomorrow's game, of course. We're going to speak a little bit about Darwin Nunez and how Napoli look to have ended their interest in him. But, as we mentioned in the video earlier on, there is still other avenues for a sale there. We're going to speak about Rodrigo Goes and the mixed reports coming out of Spain around interest from Premier League clubs. And, of course, a little look ahead to tomorrow's game, as I mentioned. So, hope we're all well. Craig, please take my phone off me or Surfshark won't save me. I can take your phone off you, Nathan. I don't have the ability to do that, sir. Not that I would either way, but for anybody tomorrow, by the way, remember the game is on ITV tomorrow. It is a free-to-air channel, but if you are in a different part of the world, you don't have access to it, well, of course, our friends at Surfshark have very much got you covered there. So, lots to go through. Of course, we'll talk about KD Taylor's triumphant 3-0 win over Amanda Serrano last night as well. Watched that I was going to say this morning, but it wasn't this morning, let's be honest. I watched that this afternoon when I got up. So where do we want to kick off tonight? I guess, for me, let's go chronologically. So let's start off with the Darwin Nunez situation. And it looks as if Napoli have moved on to the Udinese striker, at least according to reports. But that doesn't mean that Liverpool have made a mess of this. Because, of course, I do like to read the comments on the videos and keep an eye on the chat forums and see how everybody's feeling. And obviously, there's a lot of people nervous around the fact that maybe we've overpriced Darwin. And I get that. And we'll talk about that tonight. And like I said, I'm not here to judge anybody else's view on it. But all I will say is I can't imagine that Liverpool will play themselves into a corner here. So I have to believe that Liverpool either believe Napoli will come back to the table or that there is enough interest from elsewhere that they will get the asking price for Darwin that they're looking for. So let's start off with a little bit of a conversation around that one. So Sky Sports and Napoli Hub both reported that Napoli have decided to abandon the operation to sign Darwin Nunez due to the excessively high costs involved. Now look, I'm not here to say that there isn't some sincerity to that. Maybe Napoli do think the money Liverpool are asking for Darwin is too much. And that's their prerogative, like I've said all the way through. But this is why I keep saying clubs talking to players, selling them the vision, all this stuff. It's kind of wasting everybody's time if they don't get to the business of the deal, which is agreeing a fee with Liverpool. So that could be off the table. Now let's look and see if Napoli do turn to the Udinese striker, who also has interest in him from AC Milan and a couple of other clubs in Serie A. Now, once we had that news, though, no sooner was it out than more news started to come out around Darwin, and this is that he is Al Hilal's first choice in this summer's transfer window. Remember, the Saudi Pro League, I believe's window opened. They moved it forward to the 10th of July, if my memory's correct, which means the window is now open. And what I can't say to you is, if Darwin Nunez has any interest in going to the Saudi Pro League or not, I don't have a clue on that. Same with Luis Diaz. But it does look as if he is on their radar. And again, like I said, if I'm Liverpool in this scenario, I'm probably believing that an offer that will meet our valuation is going to come in from Al Hilal. But you would have to then assume that Darwin's open to that move, or else we could be well, backing ourselves into a corner, which is what we started off the very stream tonight saying that we wouldn't be doing. Have we gone back to normal? Said Philip, like monitoring players, etc. I think after tomorrow, you're probably going to see more stuff start to come out in the media and more talking about Liverpool's transfer business and stuff like that. Obviously, tomorrow is a very emotional day for everybody. First game, first time back since Diogo Jota's tragic passing, and that will have to be marked tomorrow before the game. And I think then after that, Liverpool will start to move forward in the transfer market a bit more. Understandably, I should say. Which, you know what, this feels very weird for me, by the way, because I'd usually be the person sitting here feeling nervous about Liverpool in the transfer window or feeling like we're going to be underwhelmed. But with that great start to the window that we had, it would be unfair of me to come on and start complaining about the way things are headed because, you know, we've had a brilliant start to the transfer window. And I don't think it's just us that are going to struggle with some of the valuations this summer. We've seen other clubs put off by, let's say, United. They didn't want to go as high as 65 for Mbeumo. Arsenal currently locked in a bit of a battle with Sporting Lisbon over the valuation of Victor Gyökeres. And then we've got the Newcastle, Liverpool, Chelsea and other interest in Hugo Ekitike, which seems to also have a very high valuation. So that's kind of where we're at with the striker search. Like I said to you, I'm not going to be the one to tell you this is the guy Liverpool are going for. I don't know that information. Harry, how are we, dude? First super chat of the evening. Thank you, sir. Appreciate you. Said, hey, Craig, who else do you think will leave this summer and who do you think will replace them? Love the channel. Thank you, Harry. Really good question to kick us off tonight, mate. So, who will leave? Well, there is a list of players doing the rounds that we believe could move. Now, I'm not saying this is definite, but Luis Diaz, Darwin Nunez, Canade, Chiesa, Elliott, Robbo or Costas, Ben Doak, Tyler Morton. They're names that I think we could expect to see maybe move on. Now, will everybody on that list move on? Probably not. But they are the names that are being spoken about as different levels of comfort for Liverpool to sell. The likes of Diaz, you would imagine Liverpool will have to get an offer that they just deem too good to turn down, or Lucho will stay at the club and finish his 2 years. Canade, again, that's going to come down to the Real Madrid situation. Does he agree a new contract with Liverpool or not, Harry? At this moment in time, there's nothing to suggest that a new deal is close, but there's nothing new to suggest that a move to Madrid is moving closer either. We're kind of still at a bit of a stalemate there. Nicholas said, hey Craig, I'm torn on Rodrigo. I would love for us to sign him since he's class, but if Man City or Arsenal get him, I'd be worried. Your thoughts? Certainly would be concerned if Arsenal got him, yeah. There's no denying that. I'm sitting here looking at Madueke thinking, you know, Zubamendi, okay, good player. Norgard, decent, solid signing, but nothing that's making me nervous yet. But if Arsenal were to somehow find a way to bring in Rodrigo, Victor Gyökeres, both of them on top of Madueke, and then that's looking like a bit of a better window. And in that regard, I've read a couple of things today about the Rodrigo situation. Our name has been linked and Arsenal's name has been linked, but the thing that got me worried was a report from AS, an outlet in Spain, that said Rodrigo has made it clear to those to the situation that if he was to be sold, his first choice would be to make a move to Arsenal over us. The report states that the club are willing to part with €90 million in order to sign the forward to replace Gabriel Martinelli. So if he has made a decision that if he left Real Madrid, he'd like to go to Arsenal, if we go head-to-head with Arsenal for a signature and if he's made his mind up, we'd kind of be wasting our time there. Now, I must say that this is just one report, but it's kind of the thing that caught my eye today. There was also a report from Madrid's own saying Liverpool want Rodrigo, and they use Dario AS as their report, whereas AS say Rodrigo wants to go to Arsenal if he leaves Real Madrid. So I don't know where we're at with that one, folks. I was only mentioning to Connor earlier on, and we've talked quite a bit about Rodrigo and the possibility of maybe Liverpool looking to do something there, but we've never really seen the credible links to it. It's more just been fan conversation between us, you know. Lewis said, personally, I prefer Gordon over Rodrigo. Well, let's ask that. Let's run that as a poll tonight, because it'll be interesting to see what you think. So let me ask that very question. Okay, one sec. So, who's a better deal for Liverpool? Let's go Rodrigo. And let's go Anthony Gordon. So, there was a comment. That poll is up there now if you'd like to have a vote on it. Who would be a better fit for Liverpool, Rodrigo or Anthony Gordon? So I was reading the comments just before we went live, and there was a poster, and forgive me, I can't remember the name of who it was that posted it, but the post was something along the lines of, the vitriol towards Diaz is ridiculous. And I sat back and I thought about that for a minute while I was getting ready to do the stream. And whilst I completely understand the poster's context and where they're coming from, I don't think it's unfounded that maybe some fans are a little bit fed up of players angling for a move away. Now, I don't know what happens with Diaz. I really don't. Like I've said all the way through, I'm happy if Liverpool keep him. I'm happy if Liverpool agree a deal to sell him. But I also don't like hearing people talking about other clubs. And I would imagine that other Liverpool fans maybe feel the same. We've just had a situation where Trent forced his way out. You know, we're looking down the barrel of maybe another situation with Canade where we're not sure what's happening. And then we've got Diaz openly saying that he's speaking to not only Al Nassr, but other clubs. So, yes, there will always be some Liverpool fans that go too far with their frustrations. But as I said, I don't think it's unfounded that maybe some people are feeling a little bit fed up of this situation. I don't know if it's necessarily anything to do with Lucho as himself. I think maybe he's just getting the brunt of a frustrated Liverpool fan base around the whole situation with players maybe moving away. That's just my take on it, but I do respect where the poster was coming from. Stevie boy, how are we, sir? Hope that life's treating you well in Australia. It's not an Anfield Agenda stream, dude, unless you're in nice and early with a comment, and I always do appreciate it. Said, when are Liverpool going to move in for a centre-back? We only have 3 at the club. Worrying. Yeah, mate, you know, you could be writing posts for me. I usually agree with most of what you say, and it's the position that certainly worries me at the minute. We've got Canade, who we don't know, you know, if his future is going to be at Liverpool. We've got Joe Gomez and Virgil. So, and after that, it's young Nello, or you're talking about a Gravenberch or an Endo dropping into centre-back. So, I think most of us here would agree that surely has to be the pathway forward. And I would imagine that Liverpool would want a centre-back before they go on the pre-season tour, because, you know, the games are going to be getting a little bit more intense, training's going to be getting a little bit more intense, and Ireland is going to want the squad together. So, soon, Stevie boy, I hope, mate, soon. Because we do need to, you're right. Like, again, I can't imagine that Liverpool would have sold Jarell Kwanzaa if there wasn't a plan. So all I can think of is that obviously, out of respect for the situation with Diogo, that Liverpool have put a pause on it for the minute and will surely move forward with it after that, because they wouldn't have sold Kwanzaa if they didn't think that they had a plan ready to go there for a replacement. Zoshim, how are we? Udine said, Craig, could we not have EKITIKE and Nunez as backup? Look, could it hypothetically happen? Of course. But let's be frank about this. Whatever we think and our wants or the desires were for Darwin, it just hasn't worked. And I don't like to come on here and continue to berate him. I don't. But people just won't let it go. This possibility of him maybe turning it around. The bigger point for me, personally, isn't so much the frustration of his up and down form. It's his attitude. That's the part, as a fan, for me, that I find unacceptable at the minute. And like I said, I keep coming back to that post he put out about why he wasn't being played. And that was the turning point for me, where I just thought, look, I've had a few rants at him. I've had a bit of support from him. I've been up and down with him. But ultimately, that was it. That was the end of it for me. Now, of course, with the tragic events with Diogo, you have to at least explore the idea that maybe Liverpool think, well, we've lost a player that maybe, you know, obviously we did want to leave or to not be around in exceptional circumstances that nobody would ever want to come to fruition. But it still doesn't change the fact that Darwin isn't good enough. And if we don't sell him, we're going to lose out money as well. He just isn't good enough. And I think there are enough forwards out there that, you know, whether it's a centre forward or not, that we could do something. I just don't think there's any way back. I really don't. The Phantom Panty Sniffer said, Canade is really bugging me. I prefer Gay, to be honest, but can't understand why anybody would want to leave the club. I agree with you, and I don't know what to say on it, because I really like Ibrahima Canade, and I'm really happy with him at the club, and I want him to sign the new deal. But it looks as if, at least, like we keep saying, whilst we don't hear from the player, all we can go on is the speculation. And the speculation is all pointing in the direction of him wanting to go to Madrid. So I find it really difficult to bite my tongue on it, because I want to be respectful to a player that has been a good servant for us and always looked like a good lad to have around the club. But if he truly has made his mind up, or he's had his head turned or anything like that, you know, we have to look after our own interests. That's the kindest I can be about it. And if you can find a way to get money for Canade in this window, I think we have to do it, rather than saying, right, well, we'll keep him and we let him go for free in a year. I don't think, personally, Canade is enough of a difference maker between the idea of maybe winning the Champions League or not, or maybe regaining the Premier League. And I don't think he's that much of a difference maker that if you dropped in Mark Gay or Gomez stayed fit, that you would have enough of a difference to justify letting him go for free. That's the way I am with it. So if he can't sign the new deal, I think we've got to try to find a way to move him on. That's it for me. And like you said, we asked in a poll, it might be 2 weeks ago now, would Mark Gay be an upgrade on Canade? And a lot of people said yes. You know, I don't remember the exact number off the top of my head, but it was certainly more on the yes side than the no side. So let's just wait and see what happens. I also look around and I'm dubious a little bit here. You know, so Newcastle have spent the money on Anthony Elanga. They apparently want to spend 85 million on Hugo EKITIKE. Do they have 45 or 50 million on top of that to throw at Mark Gay? I don't think so. Personally, I don't. So something has to give. And the reason that we're so powerful in the market at the minute is because we've cut our cloth accordingly in previous windows. We've, you know, gone through windows with little to no signings to allow this splurge. Other clubs haven't really done that. Now, Newcastle haven't made a whole lot of signings, to be fair to them, but they also haven't had the same level of income that Liverpool have had. So, yeah, I struggle to know what to do, mate. But it's a tough one, because it's kind of out of our hands as fans. We don't know what Canade wants to do. Greg said, I loved your reply to one of your subscribers when they said that we should give Darwin another chance, and your response was he'd only miss it. You know, that was kind of a reflex response for me to kind of make a joke out of it, because I don't want to. I hate belittling anybody who thinks the best of somebody. But sometimes I just have to be blunt and just, you know, be honest. And like I said, that gentleman at the start of the stream about Diaz, I don't want to be here moaning at somebody who wants to be respectful of a player. But it is a two-way street as well in my mind, and the players have to be as respectful of us and the club. Camel Deep, how are we, sir? Lovely to see you again. Thank you so much, mate. With us as a member for 8 months. Always appreciate seeing you in. Said, could Chiesa and a versatile centre forward be Diaz's replacement? Again, Camel Deep, mate, in theory, yes, but it would have to be a bit of a drastic change from Arne. Because this summer, we know that Fede wants to get back into the Italian national team. And the best way to do that is to be right in front of the manager's nose over in Italy playing. But even if he was to stay at Liverpool, would we be able to give him enough minutes to satisfy both his want and desire to play football and get in the mind of his manager? I don't know the answer to that, but I'm going off what Romano said before, which is that the player wants to move back to Italy. So unless something has changed, my man, I don't see it. Now, I can see the idea of a versatile forward and another wide player coming in if we can't get the centre forward that we desire. But like I said, I don't have the answers to the striker situation at the minute. I've been honest about it the whole summer. I don't know who the guy is. But I know some options that I'd love. Like, I'd love us to bring in, let's say, Rodrigo and Malik Fofana, or Rodrigo and Anthony Gordon, or Rodrigo and EKITIKE. It seems like the one thing Rodrigo wants, based off what I've been reading today in Spain, is a guarantee to be played in his favourite position, which is left side of attack. Could we give him that guarantee? Yes and no. If Diaz left, sort of, but we still have Cody Gakpo. Do you shift Cody Gakpo central? These are all things that could potentially happen, but for anyone to say it's a guarantee, I think, excuse me, they'd be lying. If Diaz and Nunez are sold, could Chiesa play more? In theory, like I just said to Camel Deep, yeah, in theory. But it would take a big change from Arna, because he didn't use him last season. And, we all wanted to see more of Fede. Got to remember, every single watch-along we did, we were all hoping we got more minutes. But we didn't. But I keep coming back as well to Arthur and Camel Deep. I keep coming back to something Arne Slot said at the end of last season. He was asked, will Chiesa be here next season? And he said yes. Definitely yes. So I'll be very happy if the plan is to give him more opportunities, as long as he actually gets them. Where's Georgie? He's there. Mate, he's been in pictures. I think the pictures of the club and the players at Anfield, looking at the flowers and tributes to Diogo. I'm sure that I'd seen Mamardashvili in one of those pictures. But he is here. He is at the club. He did come over. Obviously, all media stuff has been paused, so you wouldn't have had the announcement of him arriving in his welcome video. That'll probably happen over the next few days. But he is here. Eddie, how are we, dude? Said, do you think that Federico could be a striker? Oh, God, yeah. Like, if you look at the minutes he played for Juventus, if you divide up the three forward positions, I think I'm right in saying he was most used through the centre for Juventus when he played. So, absolutely, there's a chance for Fede to play as a striker. And I would argue you could make an argument for Mohamed Salah to play as a striker. So, yeah, look, Arne might want to get creative with this. And he might look at a little tweak to the way we play. Like people have said, maybe we go a bit more narrow and we go 4-2-2-2. Maybe we play with a false nine and an advanced midfielder who come back and forth. I don't know, but all things are possible at the minute. That's all I can say. Joy, how are we, sir? Hey, Craig, love the channel, mate. Who's a good Canada replacement other than Gay? I'd say Diamonde, but he may go to Palace. Yeah, the irony of Palace looking for a player to replace Gay that we'd looked at wasn't lost on me. So he could be an option. Nathan Collins could be another option. A younger, like if Canade is, let's say, just for an argument here, let's say Canade wants to leave the club, but is going to run down the deal, and Liverpool are okay with Canade running down the deal for a year. Then I wouldn't be at all surprised to see Liverpool go out and bring in the young defender we're talking about, whether that's a Joel Haddo, whether that's the kid from Parma. I don't know, but I think the doubt seems to be around the Canade situation, and that seemingly has pushed Liverpool towards the idea of Mark Gay, who kind of falls somewhere in the middle of still young, but also could be a future leader alongside Virgil. Can you see Mo in the middle as he ages up? So if you go back and watch my streams over the last year or so, Arthur, I'm not suggesting you sit there and watch them all, dude. There was definitely times where I said you see players like Ronaldo and others as they age and maybe lose a half yard of pace but gain, match intelligence, that they sometimes move into different roles. Messi drops a little bit deeper on occasion. Ronaldo went to be a centre forward. So yeah, but what we haven't seen is Arne willing to give it a try. So until the manager tries, we as fans can come up with all these ideas, but it's not worth anything unless Arne decides to give it a go himself. Could you see Wirtz joining Bayern in the future? Mate, how do I answer that? He's not even kicked the ball for us yet, and how could I tell you what I see happening in the future? I hope he becomes a superstar, even a bigger superstar at Liverpool, and leads us to glory. And what happens in the future, I don't know. But he's still a very young fella, so can't sit here and say he won't have another big move somewhere in his career. But I'm very grateful that he chose Liverpool at this point in time. I don't know how to answer this, dude. If you don't mind me asking, what does it feel like to be the greatest Liverpool Football Club channel on the planet? Look, I don't think of us in that way. I think of us as a great community of people, and I'm very proud of what we've achieved. But I'm just happy. That's all I can say, mate. I'm proud to be here and happy. It's not for me to make the decisions on who's the best or who's the worst. I'm just happy that I can do this for a living, that I get to chat with you guys every day, and that's it. I feel proud. It's probably the only word I would say. Excited about tomorrow's game, and what's your potential lineup? I really don't know where to go with the lineup. I remember a newspaper who I'm going to refuse to acknowledge just out of sheer spite moving forward because of the shenanigans that they constantly blank us. So let's just say a newspaper ran a lineup, a hypothetical lineup that had Kirkes on the left, Bradley on the right, had the centre-back pairing of was it Van Dijk and Canade, I think they had. Then in midfield they had, well, they basically, cut a long story short, they had Dominic Szoboszlai as a false 9 in this hypothetical 11. And it's difficult to know. Like, I haven't got a clue what way Arna's going to go tomorrow, because it's not like we've had a lot of training footage to look at or anything. Usually in the early preseason games, if my memory's right, there's been a lot of 3 lots of 30, or maybe one player might get, or some of them get 45 and then a change, but there's often 30, 30, 30 as well. So I guess it depends on the size of the squad and who's there, who's available. But tomorrow's going to be both a really emotional and really cool day. Obviously there's the farewell to Diogo and what's going to come before the game, but at the same time there's that excitement and that inner joy about seeing the boys back out on the pitch and building to a new season. Do you see Darwin and Jayden playing tomorrow? I'm not sure where Jayden's at with his fitness, so I really don't know on that one. Darwin should be back training with the squad like everybody else, so yeah, he should be in contention. These players, no matter if they're going to be at Liverpool or not, they need a pre-season anyway, so he's going to have to get minutes and work. Same way Mark Gay played 45 minutes for Crystal Palace in their first pre-season game. A Craig and Dancing Alien scarf would be sick. Oh, Newlawn, it'd be fun. It'd be fun. Right, let's run through some more stories anyway. Kenny G, thank you, bro, for gifting 5 memberships. Appreciate you. Craig, do you think we now need 2 striker signings, especially if we sell Darwin? Potentially, but like we said, a lot will depend on Dan's. A lot will depend on what other type of versatile forward we bring in. And I'm sure that there's a plan. The club are going to know what they need to do. We're not going to leave ourselves short. So if we don't see 2 strikers brought in, we can only assume that Arna's happy to go with 1 and a PSG type setup maybe with somebody else through the middle if we have to. A lot of these questions will start to be answered, I guess, over the next few weeks. But for now, we're just going to have to kind of sit tight and wait and see what happens. So let's run through some of the stories for today anyway, and we'll go from there. So we talked about the 2 situations with Darwin, with Napoli and Al Hilal. Ibrahima Konate, according to Nico Shearer, has turned down Liverpool's contract offer until 2030. After that, we had a confirmation from that newspaper that I'm not going to credit anymore, saying Florian Wirtz could have his Liverpool debut, or set for his Liverpool debut tomorrow. George Picon, who I believe covers Madrid, if I'm not mistaken, said Liverpool are looking for an attacking player with Alexander Isak their number one target. They will try to negotiate a lower price with Newcastle by including a player as part of the deal. I don't know where to go with that. I don't know how realistic it is. I don't know. But I tell you what I do struggle to believe. I struggle to believe that Newcastle have ambitions to have EKITIKE and ISAK. I struggle to really comprehend that from a couple of different ways. One, like you guys pointed out to me yesterday, just that competition for places between the two of them. You know, both of them will probably want to be that guy. So if they really move for EKITIKE, and if Liverpool sit back and watch as Newcastle move for EKITIKE, that's got to be an indication of something. Right? Now, again, I'm not trying to say we are getting ISAK. I don't know, but if we like EKITIKE and he's our backup to ISAK, and we let Newcastle go after EKITIKE and don't make a play, you'd have to assume something's afoot there, right? Because we're not stupid. You know, the people running the club aren't stupid. They're going to know. So what would the plan be then? I really don't know. This is why it's so intriguing at the minute with the forward situation, you know. There's been no committal from EKITIKE to where he wants to go. He's kind of just sitting back. And there's not even talk that Frankfurt might want to keep him because they're going into the Champions League as well. Craig, did you see Romano posted that Rodrigo wants Liverpool? Did he? Can't say I've seen that. I'd love to see it. So please feel free to point out where I can read this, because that would make me very happy. Because what I read earlier on was that Rodrigo wants to go to Arsenal if he leaves Real Madrid. So a journalist like Romano saying he'd like Liverpool would be very happy. Right, let's check our poll. So we did ask you, who's a better deal for Liverpool, Rodrigo or Anthony Gordon? Because some people were saying that they'd like Gordon over Rodrigo. We're nearly towards the 2,000 votes. We've about 200 to go. So if you haven't voted yet, please do. But it's pretty one-sided who you're voting for here. Marty, how are we? Marty Bell said, Rio getting a new deal. Do we think he gets some first-team action this season? Yes, I do, Marty. Preseason will give us a good indication. You know, we'll get to see him play against good opposition, and we'll get to see the level he's at. And if he really stands out in preseason and pushes on, sure, why not keep him around? You know, he's going to sign first professional contract next month. I think when is it his birthday or something, but next month is what's been spoken about. And we all know what an exciting young talent he is. So I'm sure Arna would love some of that youthful exuberance, but you got to see how we get on in preseason as well. Keg said, Craig, I'm really worried about our homegrown quota. Surely our next signings have to be homegrown, don't they? Well, again, we'll be aware of this. And there isn't really, there's no such thing as a homegrown quota. What there is a maximum overseas players quota. So if you want to have a full complement of a 25-man Premier League squad, then you can have a maximum of 17 non-homegrown players or overseas players versus, 8 of the homegrown. But you don't have to have the 8. I think last year we only had 7. So we sold Kwanzaa. So obviously we need to bring somebody else in. Mark Gay would tick that box, like we've said. Jeremy Frimpong is homegrown. He had 9.5 years at Manchester City's academy. So that's a homegrown signing. Obviously, we lost Caoimhín Kelleher as well, but the goalkeeper that we brought in, the third choice keeper for this season, not the youngster from Hungary, he counts as homegrown. So from my calculations, I think after the tragic passing of Diogo, we've won overseas spot available, if I'm not mistaken. Right, are we at that yet? Nearly there. 40 more votes to go. And if you haven't a second, folks, please do hit that like button for me. Try and get it in nice and early. Right, let me see this, what Mark is saying. So, what Mark sent to me is Dario AS saying that Liverpool want Rodrigo. It's not Romano saying Rodrigo wants Liverpool. The post that I'm seeing, Liverpool want Rodrigo, they're interested, and then Dario AS. So if that's the thing, that's not Romano saying Rodrigo wants Liverpool, unless I've missed something here. Let me get to this one from David. Said, hey, Greg, it's Craig, by the way. I don't know how this happens, but some people spell my name with a G at the start for some reason. It's Craig, C-R-A-I-G. Would you be happy, or excuse me, Craig, who would you be happy with if we were signing all positions? I'd be happy with Anthony Gordon as a winger. I'd be happy with Rodrigo as a winger or a utility option through the middle. I'd be happy with Mark Gay as a centre-back. I'd be happy with Joel Haddo as a centre-back option, but still would lack a bit of experience there, so that would have to have some type of belief that Canada's going nowhere. That's about it, really. You know, the rest might be depending on what happens with Diaz or, you know, like Malik Fofana. That's an interesting one because there's been a couple of reports today. One report said that Marseille are interested in Malik Fofana and talks are progressing well, said Santi_J_FM. But Fabrice Hawkins said Marseille want to sign Fofana, but the deal is unlikely. Bayern Munich, Liverpool are very interested in the Lyon player. And there was also a report that said they're unlikely to want to sell to a rival in the same league as well. So they prefer him to not go to Marseille and go outside of France. The Phantom Panty Sniffer. Rodrigo wants Liverpool. Who doesn't? Out by the collar, through the door with them. Look, I'd be very happy if Liverpool and Rodrigo ended up happening. That would be great. There'd be maybe a little pathway there to try and get. So I've got a feeling something might happen, right? In an ideal scenario, I'd love to see Liverpool try to use Canada as a part exchange in the Rodrigo deal. But what I fear might happen is that Madrid will say, we're open to a Rodrigo deal, but we want Alexis McAllister. That's my fear. Now, of course, Liverpool won't entertain that unless they've lost their minds, because Alexis McAllister is, you know, an incredible football player. But I have a funny feeling that we're going to be hit with that from Madrid if we sniff around Rodrigo, that they'll try to get Alexis McAllister, which, of course, they shouldn't have any chance of getting. Right, so we've got the votes now, and we asked who was a better deal for Liverpool, Rodrigo or Anthony Gordon, and a whopping 81% of you guys said Rodrigo is a better deal than Anthony Gordon. There was a beautiful comment last night that had me chuckling. It was one of our shorts about me talking about the £100 million valuation of Anthony Gordon, and somebody said something like, if Craig's laughing at the £100 million for Anthony Gordon, you know something's up, because he likes Anthony Gordon. And he's right. I wouldn't mind him one bit, but that £100 million number is absolute lunacy. And no, nowhere near worth £100 million. 65, 70 max for me. And like I said yesterday as well, Real Madrid have been talking about Liverpool asking for €100 million or £85 million as the number to maybe do a deal for McAllister. Not a hope. The precedent has been set. If I'm sitting here and Enzo Fernandez, Declan Rice, and Moise Caicedo, if they're all £100 million midfielders, then Alexis McAllister is a £100 million midfielder minimum. For me, £120 million, and Madrid don't have that money. And they don't. That's not me making that up. They don't have... Yeah, Moise Caicedo. It's great player. I got him on Wish just because we lost out on Moise Caicedo. That was like the overneath one day as well on the stream. Benjamin, how are we, sir? In New Zealand, I hope you're well. Be interesting if we signed Rodrigo and the rest stayed. Jose Felix, the orange screen of Madrid, said today, Madrid will sign another centre-back this summer. Canada was mentioned. Look, that would be a scenario for me, mate, that I think would get ourselves a hole if we could do some type of a deal for him. It really would get ourselves a hole. Tom said, Cannoneer, Ownbeck, Balgasia class is homegrown for us in the academy. They're over 21 now. We don't need to be using first team squad, but could register them as homegrown players. Thank you, mate. Appreciate that. I had an argument with somebody in your comments. They said that Chelsea have the best midfield in the league, and a lot of people agreed with them. They've got a good midfield. You know, I'm not going to sit here and say the idea of Caicedo and Enzo Fernandez is not a good midfield. It's a really good midfield. But we've got a good midfield as well. And it's got a bit stronger now that we've brought in Florian Wirtz as the attacking part of that midfield. So I would put up Gravenberch, McAllister and Wirtz against any midfield and say that it will, you know, it's at least in with a shout of being as good as any midfield there. So, yeah, Chelsea have a really good midfield and they'd fucking want to, wouldn't they? They've spent like 220 odd million quid on those two players, so they'd want to have a good midfield. Toby said, still need a defensive midfielder as a priority. If Grav gets injured, then we are in trouble. I get where you're coming from, Toby, but there's also the possibility of Maka dropping a bit deeper and then having Szoboszlai to play with Wirtz. Again, we have to see what happens with Stefan Bajcetic, because if he can prove his fitness in pre-season and Arne likes the look of him, well, maybe there's another option. James McConnell has really impressed Arne as well. So I'm okay with keeping one of the youngsters around if Arne says that's what he wants to do, and that person, be it McConnell, be it Bajcetic, is going to be the cover for Ryan Gravenberch. Because I definitely do agree with you, Toby, that Gravenberch was probably fortunate that he didn't pick up an injury with the amount of games he was being played in last year. So I totally understand where you're coming from. So people say Endo, right? But I don't think you've thought that through. And I'll explain why. So Endo's a holding midfielder. Cool. He is. But he's not the same type of player. And you're changing things. So the whole point of what we're doing at the minute is that we're supposed to be able to have seamless transitions. You know, if we need another attacking midfielder, we've got Wirtz, we've got Jones, we've got Szoboszlai. So the idea is that the drop-off in level and the way we play doesn't have to change. But if we're starting to play Endo in the number 6 position, then I think we have to change the way that we're playing, because he isn't as press resistant. He's very good at pressing high up the pitch, winning the ball. Certainly no slouching around the penalty area either. But he isn't Ryan Gravenberch. He doesn't have the ability to break lines like Ryan Gravenberch. So I think that's flawed, that argument of Endo. Endo's a great utility player to have around or help bring on to close out a game, but you're changing the way that we play if Endo's at the base of the midfield. Lolly said, what about Chiesa? He's still here. I think this is the third Chiesa question so far that I've answered, all with the same answer, mate. And I don't mean to sound rude about it, but what we all talk about, Chiesa doesn't make one bit of difference. What Arne thinks of Chiesa is going to be the deciding factor here, Lolly, and none of us would be upset if Arne said Chiesa's going nowhere, he's staying, we're going to play him next season. I think all of us, mate, including your good self, would be happy with that. But I can't sit here and say, yeah, that's great, because there's no proof of it. You know, maybe he plays tomorrow. Maybe we hear the manager being interviewed afterwards, and maybe he says, yeah, Fede's looking good in training, and yeah, we're going to be able to rely on him for next season. You know, that's something we'd all love. Nevin, Rodrigo for Canada and 30 million, far-fetched. I think it's on the low side. Look, obviously from our side of it, I'd want the best deal possible, Nevin, but what I think is probably a fairer, more realistic number is 40 to 45. And Canada, look, Liverpool will value Canada at £50 million. Is that realistic? I say no. I think 40 with his contract situation, even 35 is maybe more realistic. So let's call it 40. Then what do we value Rodrigo at? Well, Madrid value him at 85. So if that's the number, then you're somewhere between 40, 45 off. So I would say, I wouldn't mind the swap, but I would dare say we'd probably have to go a bit higher with the money. But if that deal could be pulled off, Nevin, I think I'd be very happy with it. That would be a pretty good deal for us, I would say. Rodrigo and I'm retiring, watching Europe. Look on and wonder. Cool. Nice. Look, I find it difficult to get excited about the idea of Rodrigo at the minute because so far I've not seen a credible link for us and Rodrigo. So I've not seen Romano, although the chat say he's posted on Facebook. I've still yet to see the post. I've not seen Ornstein. I've not seen any of the English-based ones, your Paul Joyces. Nobody really speak about it. So feels like it's one of these we're all hoping for it rather than maybe the club looking for it. Palace won 50 million for Gay. Canada will cost the same. Yeah, but they're not going to get it. They're not going to get 50 million for Mark Gay. And we're not going to get 50 million for Ibrahim Kanade. And the Mark Gay part, at least, let's be honest, he's going to go to a Premier League club. So you're going to have to pay somewhat of a premium for Mark Gay because he's homegrown. So, you know, I think your argument is actually making Canade's price go down because he's not homegrown. And that will matter. So, yeah, I don't think either club will get 50 million quid for either of those centre-backs in all honesty, because 1 year to go, just, I don't know, I think 40 is the fair number. Where are we? This one, Arthur said, for me, Stefan Bajcetic got to be back up for Gravenberch. But he has to have the pre-season. You know, he had the hamstring operation at the end of last season. Will he be ready for pre-season? Because if he's not ready for pre-season and he doesn't have time to impress the manager on the training pitch, then he's going to be playing catch-up. And we've seen what happened with Chiesa playing catch-up. He didn't get the minutes throughout the season. Dave O'Cop tweeted, Liverpool want Rodrigo. Yeah, how do I say this respectfully? That's probably on a par with me tweeting that Mila Kunis is outside my front door begging to come in. Both of them are most likely inventions of someone's thought process. I trust that gentleman about as much as I trust me to stay away from a chocolate eclair. Not very much. Endo is still more reliable than Stefan. But more reliable doesn't mean shit. Right type of player for the way that we play is the important aspect here. And Endo knows his role in the squad, is happy to do it, and the manager has certainly grown to trust him. But he can't play the role the way Gravenberch plays it. And if we're not going to have an adult grown-up conversation about that, you know, we're just wasting everyone's time. He can't. He cannot do what Gravenberch does. He just can't. So we have to change how we play, and that's going against everything that we're supposed to be doing, which is building a squad that we're able to make these changes of and not have a Plymouth Argyle moment next season. Nick said, Morton, Elliott, one of Robbo, Chimikas, Nunez and Diaz. That's a lot of money waiting to come in to be spent. Curious to see McConnell's role in pre-season. So, just running through some of those numbers, right? Let's base it off Costas. So, Morton, 15, let's say. 15, maybe 18, but let's just be scabby and say 15. Elliott, minimum 40 if there's a clause. So, let's call it 40. So, that's 55. Costas, I'd say 15 to 20. Let's go 20 to be generous because we've marked down the other two. So then we're in at what? 55 plus 20, 65. Nunez, if Liverpool get what they want, it's about £50 million. So let's, where are we up to then? Where were we at? 40, 55, 65, 75. Nunez, 50. That's 125. And Diaz, if he goes, you're probably looking at about 65, 70 million pounds. So yeah, the guts of 200 million. But it's no good bringing that money in if we don't have players ready to come in to replace. Now, of that list, by the way, the first two on the list, we don't need to worry about replacing. So Tyler Morton would just be a player moving on who hasn't quite made the breakthrough. Harvey Elliott has already been replaced with Florian Wirtz. Robbo, Chimikas, again, don't need a replacement there because we've already brought in a replacement, so we don't have to worry about squad weakening. Darwin and Diaz, yes, those two would need replacements. Of all the names you've mentioned, I think we only need to replace 2 of them. So, again, that's why I'm saying to people, don't get caught up in thinking about too many changes here, because a lot of the changes are going to be ones that were on the fringes of the squad anyway, and it's just going to be to help top up the funds. That makes sense. I hope that makes sense. But then again, half the stuff I come out with probably doesn't. Dan said 55%. I was going through all the numbers, mate. Sorry, you're right. Let's run through them slower. So 15, 40, 55, 20, 75, Nunez, 50. That's 125. Diaz, let's say 65 to split the difference. So what's that? 190. And then Average American said, don't forget the money for Doak. Yeah, look, if you brought in money for Ben Doak, I would say that's another player that doesn't need. So all these players, we might bring in 200 odd million pound, but only need to sign 2 players. Well, no, 3. Sorry, 3, because we need the centre-back situation as well. So we might have that money to come back in and us to sign 3 players and have the guts of 150, 200 million to spend on them. Craig, would you sell Robbo this summer? I would have said yes, let him go. Before tragic passing, I wouldn't let him go. At the minute, no, I'd sell Costas. For 2 reasons. One, if we're bringing in an Andy Robertson regen, basically, let him learn from Robbo for the year. And also, I think Robbo will play out of his skin this year because it's the last year of his deal and he might be looking to get an extension. So, I'd say sell Costas, and then if we need to bring in another left back in a year's time, we go and look at another left back if the Robbo situation doesn't pan out the way everybody wants, and maybe somebody from the U side breaks through, or maybe we go back into the market for a backup. Heard Celtic want Robbo. Yeah, but there's not a hope in hell they pay his wages. Not a hope in hell. Like, what's he on at Liverpool, Robbo? I dare to say it's probably 140, something like that. There isn't a hope in hell that Celtic will get even. Like, Celtic couldn't get the money together to buy Kelleher. There's no way they'll put together a package unless Robbo wants to go on a charitable mission or something back up to Celtic Park. It would be a huge pay cut for him to go up there, and I just don't see it. I don't see it. You know, maybe if he has one more year with Liverpool and he goes to Celtic, if his Liverpool contract's over in a year's time, maybe it's a far more achievable deal for Celtic, but can't see it now. Tom said, Ravella from Lazio was a backup CDM, decent, 30 million euro, and still young. Again, they're all just names, Tom, that have not been linked with us. You know, whoever you or I, Tom, look at, you can bet your backside the club will know about them, and we'll have a dossier on them, and we'll have run the numbers on them, and, you know, they've had time to prepare. Remember that. We've had a year to prepare for this window. So everything will have been played through, and they will know who they want to lose, who they don't want to lose, who maybe they have a concern about losing, and they will certainly have multiple options of who to bring in. This feels weird, by the way. I just I feel like I've reversed positions where I'm almost defending the ownership and the club's transfer business, but I'm just trying to be fair because what I've seen so far has been pretty impressive this summer. To be fair, Rob was a Celtic fan and he said he wants to end his career at Celtic, but the idea of Celtic signing this summer is fanciful. Like I said, Matthew, maybe, mate, if his Liverpool contract ends in a year's time, a move to Celtic could be possible. Rodrigo to Arsenal won't be good news for us. He'll be an amazing signing. It would worry me. It would. And like I said, when I read this earlier on, the report from AS that said Rodrigo's made it clear that his first choice would be Arsenal. Why he'd make that clear, by the way, I don't understand. Maybe he likes the idea of living in a metropolitan city like Madrid, and London is certainly one of those, but does he like finishing second? I don't get it. Like, why would he go to Arsenal to have Mikel Arteta playing him left back? No, Arteta. Or playing him in every game and not giving him a rest, and him ended up burned out. I don't understand it. In the same way I don't understand Zubamendi's thought process either. Like, you turn down the club that just won the Premier League. You turn down the club that is far further along in the development than Arsenal to go to Arsenal. It's just, is it the Spanish connection? Is it the Basque connection? Is it, I don't know, but it just feels wrong for me as a Liverpool fan. It just feels like a silly decision. Right, so what do I want to do here? What do I want to do? Right, I'm going to ask you a straightforward question because we keep going back and forth on this one. I feel like I'm going to probably ask this another 100 times over the summer, but is ISAK really possible? Because I find it very difficult to believe we'd sit back and watch Hugo EKITIKE go to, well, anybody, especially Newcastle, if we thought that ISAK was off the table and EKITIKE was the backup option. Surely we wouldn't just sit there, even if we hadn't sold Darwin, and allow him to go to Newcastle. I can't imagine a scenario where that happens. So, is it possible? Because, like we say, the story ain't going away. A little bit now from Sporting Lisbon president Frederico Varandas issuing a pretty strong statement around Gyökeres, and he did not report back for training. He said, "We're calm. Everything can be solved with the closure of the market, a heavy fine, and an apology to the group. If they, Arsenal, don't want to pay Victor's fair market value, we'll be very comfortable with that for the next 3 years. If the geniuses who are devising this strategy think that this puts pressure on me to make it easier for him to leave, not only are they completely wrong, but they're also making it more complicated for the player to leave. Nobody is above the interests of the club, whoever they are." Pretty strong words from the Sporting Lisbon president there. Arsenal really are making a meal out of signing a striker, aren't they? Like, I mean, I know we need one, but they've needed one for 2 years, maybe. And yet still, they talked with Šeško, couldn't get that deal agreed. And now they're in a situation with Viktor Gyökeres where seemingly they can't get that deal agreed either. It's weird, right? It is weird. You would think of all the things that they had to do this summer, that would be priority number one, right at the top. Get that done, and then the rest of the window, you can figure out the rest of the stuff. But I find it quite funny that they still haven't figured it out yet. I want a proven goal scorer to Liverpool. If Isak's not coming, what about Ollie Watkins? Again, though, he's 30 years of age. Are you going to pay 50 million quid for a 30-year-old? A 30-year-old who's already admitted his dream moves to Arsenal, by the way, because he's an Arsenal fan. That put the kibosh on Ollie Watkins in my mind anyway. The age, the price, and the fact that he's an Arsenal fan who's openly said he'd love to go there if he had the opportunity, that would be a no for me. There's just no future in that. It's just too short-term thinking. Don't get Arsenal's transfer strategy, said Northern Accent. Always wanted midfielders over defenders or strikers, spending stupid accounts, yet arguing over 5 million, and buying Chelsea rejects left, right and centre. That is hilarious. Raheem Sterling, don't you worry, fella. We got you. Kepa, bring it in. Madueke, 55 million. No problem. We got you. Striker, none out there, lads. What can we do? Do you know what I mean? We tried. But here's another midfielder. Here you go. Here's Christian Norgard. Bet you never thought of playing Christian Norgard up top, did you? Where can I watch the game tomorrow? ITV isn't available for me. I don't mean to be rude, mate, but I don't know if there is another way. You know, remember Surfshark? Our friends at Surfshark have got you covered, but it's a free-to-air channel that is region locked. So, you know, I don't think it's on LFC TV, mate. People are saying this on the Liverpool app. Is it really? If it's on the Liverpool app, then why did ITV pay for the rights of it? Is it really? Sorry. Lots of the chat are saying it's on LFC TV. Cool. Makes my life easier. It's on both. Oh, cool. Sweet. Well, then I'll be watching it on LFC TV. Nice one. Thank you for that. I thought it was only on ITV. Sweet. What time is kickoff tomorrow? 3 o'clock. But they do ask everybody to be in their seats by 2:45 because obviously the tributes and stuff to Diogo that are happening before the game. Sweet, that's nice. It's on LFC TV. That's brilliant. Happy days. Mr. Zane said Newcastle getting EKITIKE means we'll sell ISAK because 86 million player won't sit on the bench. That's kind of my thinking, but all I can say to you, mate, is that the Telegraph wrote this. They say Newcastle United are readying themselves to sign Frankfurt striker Hugo EKITIKE, and they know it would most likely cost them the full release clause. They go on to say it's stated that any successful deal to bring EKITIKE to St. James's Park would not mean Alexander Isak is leaving. You know, that's the Telegraph saying that they plan to sign EKITIKE, but the plan is not to bring him in and sell Isak. Lewis Houston said, was at the Tyrone game earlier, Craig. Hope you're good. I think you lost to Kerry, if I'm not mistaken. I was flicking through earlier on, and I'm sure I seen there was, 2 or 3 points in it to Kerry. So, unless I got that wrong. But either way, I hope you enjoyed the day, Lewis. I appreciate you being a member with us for 23 months, my friend. That's awesome. Thank you. Let's swoop in for Mbeumo. I'm not going to lie, mate. I wouldn't have said no to Brian Mbeumo. I wouldn't. He's a good player, but he seems to have made it pretty clear he wants to go to United, despite anybody else. Like Spurs, I think, were interested as well at one point. Let's get both Isak and EKITIKE. Imagine, like, if we ended up the window with Rodrigo and EKITIKE or Isak and Gordon. Nah, that's not going to happen. It's not going to sell Gordon as well. I don't know, lads. I don't know how the front line looks by the time the window shuts. I really don't have a clue at this moment in time. Wouldn't be against Visa. He's too old. He's too old. What age is Visa? He's told me yesterday. I can't remember. Was he 28, 29, something like that? One second. Let me just read this out. So they say it's on All Red Video, but does that mean is it on LFC TV or not? Like the streaming platform of All Red Video, but I don't have that. I have LFC TV, so does that mean it's on LFC TV or not? Oh, it says bottom of that page. It does. Nice one, Mark. Thank you. Full list here. Let me click on it. Right, let me just screen through this. says Liverpool's pre-season friendly against Preston North End this Sunday will be streamed live in all red video. Our coverage of the fixture, which will be played as the club continue to mourn the tragic passing of Diogo Jota, will begin at 2:15. Kick-off is 3 p.m. Said all red full and all red video members will be able to watch. The full details can be found here. The game will also be shown on LFC TV, on Sky and Virgin. So there you go. Yeah, cool. It's on both, 100%. Thank you, Mark, for sending me that on. I still haven't seen that Romano post that you guys were talking about, by the way. George, it is on ITV, but it's also on LFC TV and LFC TV all red. Yeah, I still haven't seen that Romano post that says Now, you can say Facebook all you want, but I'm not seeing the post where he specifically says Rodrigo wants Liverpool. I've seen a post that's crediting Dario AS as the source to say Rodrigo wants Liverpool, but I've not seen Romano saying Rodrigo wants Liverpool. So, again, I'm going to have to take it that post doesn't exist yet because no one's been able to find it from our side. So Romano is now shared on Facebook about Rodrigo wanting Liverpool. Yeah, but it's not him saying it. That's the point. He was quoting a Spanish newspaper. Same as me quoting a Spanish newspaper. You know, he's not saying my information is that Rodrigo wants Liverpool. He's saying that there's a report from Dario AS that Rodrigo wants Liverpool. Which again is like people saying it's on the LFC TV website when they're talking about the Media Watch part of the website, which is not Liverpool saying X or Y. It's just newspaper reports. Oh, close one this. So we asked, is ISAK really possible? I really do want as many of you guys, if you have a chance to vote on this one for me, because it's close. It's close. So is it really possible? Yes or no? We'll leave that one running a bit longer. It's nearly at 1,000 votes. And if you haven't hit the like button for me, folks, please do. If you're new to the stream as well, welcome along. Nice to have you in. He wouldn't quote it if he didn't trust the source. You're just pulling that out your arse, Jack. Like, stop. It's just, mate, that's just bollocks. I don't know what else to say. Of course he'd quote it. He gets clicks from it. You don't think the money-driven fella is going to just spout any shite that gets him a post? Okay. I don't know what to say to you, mate, but you need to really reevaluate what you believe, is what I'm going to say to you. Just, you know, have a little think about it. Craig, you must be so much more interesting than me because my fiance listens to you more than me in the evenings. She's right to. You know, I'll never steer in the wrong direction. So, this is fiance. Thank you. And you're right. I'm far more trustworthy than your fella. Okay, don't know what to go with that one. Someone said I misclicked the vote and voted no by accident. All good, my man. Happens to the best of us. Happens to the best of us. Right. So there's a report that's from Ebola that said Liverpool's Alexis McAllister is a transfer target for Real Madrid. The funny part, though, as I mentioned, is a value of more than €100 million was placed on the Argentine World Cup winner. Really? I've a question about something, actually. You know the Morgan Gibbs-White move from Forest to Spurs? And the whole thing is there's an argument of whether the release clause was leaked because there was an NDA signed. Am I dumb, or is it pointless having a release clause and an NDA that stops anybody knowing the release clause exists? Like, what's the point of the release clause if an agent can't let a club know that are interested in the player the number it would take to get him? Like, are clubs supposed to just start throwing in random bids now for an amount of money, hoping that they hit the release clause number? It just feels really weird that there's a release clause, there's an NDA that stops anybody talking about the release clause. What's the point of the release clause? Surely a release clause has to be there so as an agent can get their client a move if an offer of X amount comes in and the player wants to take it. I find the whole thing a bit strange. Even was watching Mark Ogden speak about it last night on Sky. He seemed to have the same mindset. Like, it's a bit weird that you've got a release clause and an NDA to stop anybody knowing about it. Also, even if the Spurs deal falls through, doesn't anyone know there's a release clause now anyway? It's a really good point, mate. Yeah. Fair play. That's a really good point. Yeah. Everybody now knows there's a release clause. Yeah, fair play. That's a good point. So they've kind of shot themselves in the foot a bit there. Yeah, that's a really good point. The first rule of the release clause is that you don't speak about the release clause. Yeah. Although, to be fair, we found out about Alexis McAllister's release clause that apparently was difficult to find out about. And there was also Takumi Minamino. I remember reading an article that said United were willing to offer, I think it was 30 or 35 million for Minamino. And then we got him for like 7.5 because we knew about the release clause that United didn't know about. Stephen Byram, thank you, bro. Appreciate you. No, it's to get the club to speak to the club of the player. But everyone's under an NDA. Look, Forest don't want to sell Gibbs White, right? So if I go to Nottingham Forest and I say, hi, I'd like to buy Morgan Gibbs White, please. And they say, no, he's not for sale. You think if they don't want to sell the player, they're going to tell you about the release clause voluntarily? So again, I don't think that point makes sense either. Do you think we're going to have a Paisley era again? Oh, I don't know, mate. I don't know, but Ireland's gotten off to a really good start, hasn't he? With getting the Premier League wrapped up in year one. Would Forest be able to sell him for more than the release clause value? 100%. So think of a release clause like this, and again, they're not all the same. But usually a release clause would have a definition of how that clause is activated. Now, a lot of the clauses will be, let's say, Morgan Gibbs White's release clause is 60 million. That could be a release clause that says that 60 million has to be paid in one lump sum straight away. Or there could be other release clauses that say the fee can be paid in 3 equal installments over X amount of years. And then what you also get now are clubs looking at, let's talk about Eze and his release clause. So apparently Arsenal are looking at offering a little bit more than his release clause at Palace because it will give them, or they hope it will give them more favourable terms to pay it. So let's say the release is 60, they'll go, look, we'll give you 65 if you accept over 3 years or 4 years or whatever it is. Craig, it's the final tomorrow. What do we think the score will be? Oh, it could be anything. I don't mean to be disrespectful to Chelsea, but that could be a whooping if PSG show up tomorrow. Like, that Chelsea midfield is really good, like I've said, but that Chelsea defence is not great at all. And that PSG team, if they're on form, that could be it could be a really tough evening for those Chelsea players. David said, do you think we sign Gay next? I hope that we've paused only because of the events with Diogo and Andre. But I don't know is the honest answer. The common sense link to make here would be, yeah, you'd hope that we move there because we defo need a defender. How come you're streaming? Honest answer is we were supposed to go out for a meal tonight to a steak restaurant and have a meeting. And the weather was so warm that all of us said there's not a hope in hell that we can have the meat sweats on top of, the normal heat sweats. So we just thought, no, let's just knock that one on the head and we'll have a meeting a bit down the line about it. So we just kicked it down the road. Just didn't want the meat sweats on top of the heat sweats, you know? Too much sweating. Craig, be a fast move by the club, by which I mean get the players to sign inserted release clause, plus they threw the NDA to stop leaks of the release fee. But then, like I said, what's the point of the release clause if nobody's allowed to know about it? If the agent isn't allowed to tell an interested club about it, the player's not allowed to talk about it, what's the point of it? You know, and if journalists are asking these questions like they were last night, are you just supposed to start throwing numbers? Right, here's a 50 million quid offer, here's a 55 million quid offer, here's a 60 million quid offer, here's a 65 million quid offer. And even if you hit the 60 million quid, who's to say that they're going to say, yeah, we'll accept that 60 million quid because maybe they just don't want you to buy the player. That's what I'm saying. It just feels really weird, the whole thing. Like, if Forrest's argument is that there was a tapping up, well, let's be honest, then every transfer deal that's ever taken place has probably involved a tap up because that's how football works. One thing I would say is Forrest don't seem to need an excuse to start threatening legal action. You know, Marinakis has history with that. And whether it be not liking referee decisions or anything, he seems to love threatening legal action. And, you know, let's wait and see what happens. If we don't get ISAK or Rodrigo, do Liverpool prefer quantity over quality for other positions? I don't know, Darshan. I hand on heart, mate. I don't know what the club's plans are in attack. Apart from the obvious, we need to move Darwin on and get a striker, and with the tragic events around Diogo, I would have to imagine that the club will look for another striker. Or, you know, it's difficult to talk about, obviously, but ultimately we can't go into the season understaffed. Do we know Wirtz's number? I don't think we're going to get the official squad numbers until the Adidas kit launch. Yeah, there will be numbers tomorrow. And what was the ones that we seen the players in yesterday? 57 and 37 or something, was it? What was this? There was a number. Where was it? I think it was like 57 and 37 or something, but there was a post with players walking in training gear that had numbers on. Yeah, I don't seem to have it anymore. I think it was like 57, 37, something like that. Something mad. I don't believe that'll be their actual numbers now. My guess if Diaz stays would be 27. Yeah, my guess would be 30 for Frimpong and 27 for Wirtz, unless maybe Diaz leaves and the 7 becomes available, in which case 7 seems a pretty good fit for Wirtz. Yeah, 59 and 57. So Wirtz was wearing 59 and Kirkes was wearing 57. Thanks, Mark. So Luke Edwards of The Telegraph has written this. Newcastle United are hoping to finally land striker Hugo EKITIKE in a huge statement of ambition. So again, all the noises coming out of Newcastle side is that this is an we want him as well signing. As they said, a sign of ambition. Do I believe it? I'm dubious. I'll be honest, I am. I'm a bit late on the news so far. We're just kind of figuring out whether we believe some of the stories that have been doing the rounds today, like Newcastle wanting EKITIKE and ISAK Itachi. Do we think that that's realistic? What do we think happens with Darwin we're talking about? Because obviously Napoli are, at least publicly, saying that they're moving on to the Udinese striker because of the fees involved for Darwin. But then very, very quickly, and look, like I've said before, I don't often believe in coincidences. And no sooner had Napoli put out the information that they were moving away from Darwin did we have an immediate post coming out from the Al Hilal world to talk about Al Hilal wanting Darwin Nunez. Now remember, Saudi Pro League tried to get Michael Edwards. Remember that, because I think this is important here. And I think this isn't an accident that Napoli come out with this and then we brief and then Saudi come out with that. I don't think that's a coincidence, personally, for what it's worth. Have we spoken about the game tomorrow? Well, we spoke a little bit about it. Obviously, it's a 3 p.m. kickoff. It's going to be an incredibly emotional afternoon for everybody concerned. Hopefully, a very cathartic experience as well. And look, there's going to be a mixture of obviously sadness with Diogo's loss, but also excitement and optimism for, you know, the future and the new players. John said, even though Darwin Nunez hasn't proved his worth, if he stays, I think he'll have a monster season for us. Cool. I think he'll be shit, because that's all he's been since he's been here over the course of his time, with small little bursts of quality. And like I said, I don't want to go and give out or moan to anybody who wants to think the best of a player, but I just don't think you're basing your thought process in any type of realism other than a desire for him to do well, which is cool. But we've had 2.5 years of that and 2 different managers of that, and it hasn't worked. Won't be here for a week. Sorry, as I'm on holiday. Is that like just a little flex there? I'm on holiday, and I hope you have a good trip, mate. I never understand anybody going on holidays in the summer, by the way. I find that really weird. If you leave the UK or you leave Ireland at the one time of the year where it's decent weather, to go to somewhere where it's even hotter. For me, when I want to get out of Ireland, I want it to be in October, March, February, when it's freezing and I need a bit of sun. But I guess, I don't know, maybe I'm a little bit more careless about having the kids missing a week or 2 of school during the term. In the summer, kids are at home, so yeah, I get that, but still, one, you're getting a jacked up price to go somewhere that you'd probably get for 40% cheaper at another time of the year. I've never understood the appeal of it. I just think it's all madness. Am I going to be selling Anfield Agenda merchandise, like the hoodie? I don't have any plans, no, Lewis. I hate trying to sell stuff, mate. I hate the idea of it. Even like the shows, I always feel guilty about the idea of trying to push the tickets or whatever. No, we've no plans on merchandise at the minute, mate. I'm terrible when it comes to the financial side of it, of our business. There's probably 10 things I could do to improve that side of it, but I get sidetracked by just wanting to come on and chat. Anyone fancy a Vert Screamer tomorrow? I'm interested to see if he plays from the start, or I'm intrigued because like we've only had a few days of training as well, so I'm not really sure what to expect tomorrow with regard to the strength of the team that Arne puts out, or you know what to expect to see on the pitch. So let me ask a question to all the Diaz fans. Let's be respectful and call you Diaz fans. How do I say this without sounding like an absolute arsehole? I struggle to understand how anybody can gloss over Darwin accusing the club of not playing him over a 5 million quid payment. I feel like some fans that want Darwin to do well have a lack of self-respect, because that's unacceptable, what he said. To me, it just is. And there was no apology. he accused the club, the manager, of not playing him because of €5 million. And not because he was shit, or not because he'd been given umpteen chances and let people down, or because he stormed off social media, or I don't understand how all of that's glossed over and there's no... Is it true though? It's 100% true. We posted it on social media. It's fucking 100% true. It's very easy to go and look for. I don't get that. I don't get why that's acceptable. To me, it isn't. It just isn't. That's just the way I see it. Between that and his strop with not clapping, the travelling, like, whatever you think about us moaning at him, or me moaning at him, or somebody in the chat moaning at him, one thing I think we have to be honest about is the away Liverpool fans that travel to watch them play, they never lost faith in Darwin. They never stopped singing his name. They never stopped backing him. Even when many others had turned on him, they were fantastic with him. And he disrespected them as well. I just think it's incredibly disrespectful of the badge, personally. Darshan said, Darwin fans simply take football lightly. They don't think this true. I just don't understand that there's a new breed of football fan. And this could be an age thing. I'm absolutely open to this being an age thing. But there's a new breed of football fan that is player fan and not club fan. And I could sit here and say you're a hypocrite, but again, I start watching the NFL and I'd be a liar if I said to you that players aren't what tempted me to stay and watch the NFL. It was Aaron Rodgers being brilliant. It was Patrick Mahomes. It was superstars like that got me watching the NFL and the magic that these guys came up with. But I've never really experienced it as a football fan until, I want to say, probably Mo came to the club. That was probably my first, maybe Sadio, but both of those gentlemen, it was my first real taste of, I'm a Mohamed Salah fan, I'm a Sadio Mane fan, I'm a Ronaldo fan, an Mbappe fan. I never really experienced that as a fan before. So this whole thing to me is kind of new. I'm a Liverpool fan. And I'll have favourite players, but ultimately, for me, the club is above all else, because the club will be the one constant in my life of it being a Liverpool fan. You know, we'll have great players that will break our hearts and leave, and ones that will idolise forever. But ultimately, the club is that one continuous, constant thing, and it's the ethos and the warmness of the supporters, and you know, it's the club that I fell in love with, not a player. So maybe it's an age thing. Like, when I got really wound up with the Mane stuff when there was a lot of people saying that Liverpool were disrespecting Sadio Mane, and people were like going in on our club while still professing to be a fan. I found it all weird. It was my first real taste of that backlash. Like, Euro said, I'm 50 and still love Darwin, and of course Liverpool. But he disrespected it. You wouldn't still love a fella that disrespected your wife in that way, would you? Like, you wouldn't hold somebody in the same regard who disrespected your children, your brother, your friend in that way. So why would a player get away with it without apologising? He's just a petulant child, in my mind, who can't accept his own failures. But again, that's just my opinion. Triller X said, let's be real with ourselves. It's been 3 years and it's not clicked for Nunez. 3 years and also 2 different managers. And I think that's important to say as well, because there'd be far more rationale to this if it was a Jurgen thing. And we're sitting here thinking maybe Jurgen just can't get the best out of Darwin. because that happens. Definitely happens. There are some players and some managers that just don't click, and others that work really, really well. So, if Arne wasn't here, then maybe I would think differently on the possibility of him turning it around. But we've had 2 different managers now and no change. And I can't imagine that both of those managers and their managing styles didn't at least try the arm around the shoulder approach or whatever it was. Because I remember both managers backing him and defending him. So I think it's admirable that people want Darwin to succeed. I just don't think it's ever going to happen. Hey Craig, thank you. Love everything you do. I saw Fabrizio post that we want Rodrigo. Anything to it? Thank you, by the way, for actually coming in with the right stuff. That we want Rodrigo. Appreciate that. Because there was a bit of confusion earlier on. 117 Tommy. Truth is, mate, I don't know if there's any truth to it, but I can tell you, I hope that there's truth to it. Because I would like Rodrigo to come into Liverpool, especially if we were to lose Luis Diaz or somebody. I think he'd be a very interesting get still at quite a young age, but plenty of experience. I'd be delighted, mate. And if Canade has made up his mind that he only wants Madrid and there was any way we could part exchange Canade to get rid of that potential headache as well, that would be great. But all I can say to you is I won't lie and say I know there is interest in Rodrigo, but I hope that there is, because I like the idea of it myself. But what's about Darwin? I'm absolutely open to the idea that he could join Napoli, whoever, and do well. That definitely could happen. I'm not trying to say that we won't be sitting here in a year's time saying Darwin just did 30 in a season for Napoli. But the context, I think, needs to be the right environment for him. And whether that environment is a tactical thing, the pace of the league, the culture, the fans, it's okay that it doesn't work out for a player at a club. I'm not trying to say that Darwin Nunez is a shit footballer. He clearly isn't. But I'm just trying to say, I don't think that there's any set of circumstances that we can do right now to justify not moving him on. That's the best way I can put it. Bro, come on, you can't tell me you wasn't a true Robbie Fowler fan, but at the same time the club being the most important. Well, of course I can tell you. Why can't I tell you that I told you Robbie Fowler's my favourite ever player, but I'm not going to choose Robbie Fowler over the football club. Like, Robbie Fowler left Liverpool and went to Leeds. I didn't start supporting Leeds. I don't get your point. He went to Manchester City. I didn't start supporting Manchester City. I just don't get what point you're trying to make. If Fowler had gone to Barcelona, I wouldn't have started supporting them over Liverpool. I don't get it. I don't get what you're trying to say. Definitely give him the chance. Might be worth becoming a rotational player. But he was that last season and he was shit. Like, again, half the season was split between him and Diogo and he just didn't do it. And for those who said, what did he say? Just Google it. It's really easy to find out. Just Google Darwin Nunez social media post about why he's not playing and you'll find the answer really quickly. Todd said, I know Bournemouth might not want to sell, but I take a punt on Evan Nielsen. Yeah, you're not the first, mate, to mention Evan Nielsen. I haven't got a clue. He's had a good season with Bournemouth, definitely has, but and I'd seen a little bit of him at Porto, wasn't that where he was at before? But I wouldn't have a clue, mate, if he'd be good enough for us or not. So, we're close to 2,000 votes. The question that we asked, and it's really close, is ISAK really possible? So this is the bigger poll of the evening, I would say, and it's really close. So if you haven't voted yet, please do have your say. So, you see, Alex, Your post is wrong. You said after the news came out of Nunez not playing because of the 5 million, he said, no, I am not playing. But he played the next game. So the statement that that was a fact as to why he wasn't playing that you've put in, and I don't know if it's a language thing or whatever, but it's not true. He wasn't playing because he wasn't performing. And he played the game after that, to the best of my recollection. So it wasn't the money. But he tried to say that that was the reason. He couldn't accept that maybe it was down to his own form. Nunez sounds like a spoiled brat, to be honest. Look, I get it. I'm an emotional fella. So I look at Darwin and I think, honestly, sometimes I get it. I say stupid stuff when I'm angry. But you have to have a bit of self-reflection as well. And we all do and say things in the heat of the moment, but he doesn't seem to want to learn the lesson of keeping his trap shut or biting his lip and hanging off for a little bit. And we'll all have mistakes, but you try to learn from those mistakes. But at the same time, it is that emotion that makes him the player he is as well. So when it clicks for him and he's confident and he's powerful and he's running the channels, all that again comes from that fire. So it's a tightrope to walk, but if you can harness it, which is why I thought the move to Napoli and working with Antonio Conte in a slightly slower paced league, but maybe had a bit more space to get in behind and run in the channels and stuff, maybe it would have suited him. So yeah, I just think not maybe the right league for Darwin Nunez, rather than he's not a decent footballer. Because I can see a world where he goes and scores goals in another league. I just don't think he's Premier League player for Liverpool. I just don't think there's the space for him to exploit the way he'd like. I just don't think it's the right environment. Casey said the number of offsides and lack of decision making is too much. Yeah, what really got me about the offside stuff was, if there's one thing I think we'll all agree on, it's Darwin has pace to burn. Like, that's why the offside stuff infuriated me. Like, if you're, let's say, I don't know, who's a forward who's not lightning quick? Let's say, I don't know, for argument's sake, you're a forward like Michael Owen after his hamstrings, and you're playing on the shoulder because you want to get every advantage because maybe you don't have the same burst of acceleration that you once had. Fair enough. But Darwin could give himself that extra yard or two. Harry Kane's probably a good example. Yeah, thank you, Harley. Harry Kane's probably a good example. Maybe you're playing on the shoulder then because you need that. But Darwin could give most fullbacks or centre-back a yard or two and tear them over 10 yards because he is rapid over 10 yards. Like, he is fast and physical and strong. That's what wound me up the most. It's like, dude, give yourself a breather. Give yourself that extra yard. You've got the pace to cover yourself. Chris said he can't handle Premier League. Doesn't Saudi want him? He do. Yes, Al Hilal. The report today, mate, said that Al Hilal want Darwin Nunez. Now, like I've said, and the same with Luis Diaz, I can sit here and tell you of the interest from Al Hilal in Darwin, or the interest of Al Nasser in Luis Diaz, but I have no idea the thought process of the players towards that move. And I can also sit here and say to you, if I'm Liverpool and Luis Diaz, as an example, would like to leave, well, does it make more sense to me to sell him to Saudi or to sell him to Barcelona or Bayern Munich, who are going to be in the Champions League? Clearly, it would make more sense, probably for a financial standpoint, and to get him out of Europe and not come back to bite us in the backside, to move him over to Saudi. So I can see a world where Liverpool turn around to Diaz, if he's going, where they say, well, you're staying with us or you're going over to Al Nasser. They're your options, because we've no interest in selling to Bayern. We've no interest in selling to Barca. So maybe it could be that's the case as well. Hornstein said that United wants to be on the front foot on Rodrigo ahead of Liverpool and Arsenal. Honestly, I just find it... I find it incredibly disrespectful to all those hard-working former Manchester United employees that were made redundant because there wasn't a pot to piss in, to then hear of the huge amounts of money United are suddenly able... They were weeks from running out of money. But now all of a sudden, Mbomo, 65 mil, Cunha, 62.5 mil, Rodrigo, 85 mil. And I know they'll sell some players, but let's be honest, the players that they're going to want to sell are players that everybody in the world knows United need rid of and are probably on more money than any of these clubs will want to pay, the likes of Garnacho or Marcus Rashford. I find the whole thing really disrespectful to those people that lost their jobs because of the stupidity of the executives that made stupid decisions and wasted money, and these poor hard-working people who are on the front line of Manchester United, whether they're stewards, whether they're club store, whether they're liaison officers, whatever they are, they lost their jobs, and Radcliffe cried poor mouth, and then at the same fucking time, they're talking about building a £2 billion stadium, and they're out here spending money like drunken sailors. That, to me, I find that weird, and I would dare to say I'm not on my own, because he's a sir. He's a sir. And he doesn't seem to be treating with respect. I don't know. I have respect for United as a club, a whole lot of respect for them, but I don't think this is right. Craig, did you see all the people wanted Diaz out because he didn't go to the funeral? I said this at the time, mate. I'm never going to judge anybody for these personal choices. So, can I understand why maybe if Ronaldo didn't want to be there, to be taken away from the family or having the cameras and the eyes of the world on them? Maybe the same with Salah. I don't judge. You know, we all deal with grief differently. It's a very unique personal thing. I hate going to the graveyard. Now, like both my parents are dead and buried, and I have no interest in going up near the graveyard to see them because I don't get any comfort from it. So I'm not here to judge. You know, everybody will be dealing with these things in their own way. It's not for me to say what's right and wrong. You know, you haven't heard me say anything along those lines on here because it's not my place to judge them in that scenario. Thoughts on us potentially signing Malik Fofana? I don't know much about him, other than he's Belgian, plays for Lyon. 60 million euros apparently the number, and there's a lot of clubs, including Bayern Munich, Liverpool, Marseille, interested in him. And it definitely is a link that's been there for a while, but I just don't know. I just don't know. Dino said, too many changes starting to worry me, not going to lie. Well, we tried to go through this earlier on, Dino, and let me try and bring up a post for you, mate, that I hope will explain it out a little bit better than I maybe could. 1 second. So, Nick put up a list of potential players that may move on, right? So, if we look at the list, I think hopefully will help negate some of the too many changes malarkey. So, we've lost Kelleher, brought in Mamardashvili. We kind of knew that was going to happen. We lost Trent and we brought in another right back. We kind of knew that was going to happen. So, left back, every one of us said we needed a new left back last season. We've got one, and we're going to lose one of Robbo or Costas. So, not too much change in that position. Centre back, yeah, there's a potential to have change there. But again, let's put it into context. Kwanzaa wasn't good enough last year, and the manager didn't feel like he could trust him, hence he didn't play him that much. So, if we bring in the new centre-back because we sold him, that just makes sense. Canade's situation's still up in the air, granted. And up top, well, let's talk about who we lose there. Diaz, potentially yes. But again, that'll be because Diaz wants to go. And a striker. I don't see too much change really at all, because we could have a starting 11 where we've 2 new fullbacks, but other than Wirtz, it might not be too much different. So I'm not worried about too much change yet, and I also don't think the club will leave themselves in a vulnerable position. Aaron said, don't know where Rodrigo would play, not a striker, and wouldn't leave Madrid to be a bench player again. Don't think Gakpo would fancy a bench role either. But again, look at the Diaz and Gakpo situation last season. Both of them got loads of games. So the idea to say to Rodrigo that you can't play on the left is probably not true. He probably could still play 35 games on the left. And maybe Gakpo plays some more, and maybe Gakpo moves in central. So it's possible, but again, I'm not sitting here trying to say we're signing Rodrigo. It looks as if Rodrigo's asking or looking for a club that will allow him to play in his favourite position, which is the left side. You know, whether he's able to find a club that both, 1, can meet his ambition, 2, can pay what Real Madrid want, and 3, can guarantee him that. I don't know. Like, there's probably only a handful of clubs in world football that can afford that fee. Arsenal, yeah, but do they have the money to bring in him, to bring in Madueke, to bring in Gyökeres, to bring in Zubamendi, to bring in Norgard? I don't know. United, let's be honest, why would you go to United? That's just admitting defeat in your career already. So I think Rodrigo may have to have a look at the options that are on the table for him as well. You know, we'll all have great ideas of what we'd want. And look, he's entitled to have a dream scenario where he goes, I go to this club and I play here and I play every week. But, you know, maybe that opportunity doesn't present itself. Maybe there has to be a compromise to some extent. Dan, hey Craig, I just wanted to say my piece with Mo and Lewis. It was a visa issue. I have a Colombian friend that couldn't attend her uncle's funeral in Milan for same reasons. Love the stream tonight. Thank you, Dan. Good insight, mate. Appreciate that. Certainly not. It's not a topic that I've seen brought up. So, yeah, look, there was no judgment for me either way on them, but I certainly would agree that there were Liverpool fans, or let's just say there were football fans who were trying to vilify them for it, but it could hardly have been that they didn't care, you know. I never thought that was going to be the case. But thank you, Dan. I really do appreciate that input, mate. Virginia said Diaz was in Colombia at a prior obligation. That was the same day from what I read. Again, to me, there's no issue there with whatever the reason was. I think it's a personal thing, grief. And, you know, let's just say he said, I want to, what happened with Diogo made me realise I want to be close and hold my family. And I want to see my mum and dad, and I want to be around my family now more than ever because I realise how precious life is. And you know, all of these reasons are valid. VI Joker said, I think Diaz would be mad to leave Liverpool now when the club is in a good place. I agree. And Liverpool don't want Diaz to go either by the looks of it, but whether it's a financial thing, because remember, we have differences of opinion between what we think he's on. The newspaper that refuses to credit us believes that he's on 140 grand a week. Others believe he's on 55 grand a week. I don't know which one of those numbers is true, but I do know he's got 2 years to go in his Liverpool contract, and for whatever reason, Liverpool don't seem to want to give him a pay bump. So then his options are sit tight and see out your 2 years, or find a club that are willing to tempt Liverpool into selling. Am I streaming the Preston match tomorrow? Yes, we'll be on from 2:15, my friend. 2:15 tomorrow. Right, ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to go grab some dinner, but appreciate you all dropping in tonight as always. We will be back tomorrow at 2:15 to start the watch along. So the way tomorrow's going to work is we're going to do the watch along of the Preston game. Then I'm going to do a little recorded thoughts after the game on how people played and how we looked. And then we'll have a news video tomorrow night, because obviously a lot of people will be watching the Club World Cup final. So I'll put out a news video later tomorrow night then. Appreciate you all dropping in. Enjoy the rest of your weekends. Even if we didn't agree tonight, appreciate the understanding and the way everybody went about it in the chat. Top class people, appreciate you. I need you to hit the like button. Oh, we can't have the streak broken. We need you to hit that like button before you go. We need 190. So if you do have a second, hit it for us. And again, thank you. Appreciate you. We'll talk soon. Bye.